Well, what does free man mean to me? It means actually living it, kind of walking the walk, or whatever you call it. I got into the concept in sort of late 2008 because I got fed up of kind of going on protest marches in London and against the war in Iraq and Afghanistan and all the rest of it, and nothing ever changing. So when I came across this free man thing, I didn't really believe it, but I thought it might be if it checked out, it might be a good way of actually, putting up some kind of rebellion or resistance against what's going on, And having checked it out and found that the bulk of it did check out with my own independent research, I started sort of getting into it, and then I probably got bogged down in a lot of the detail, of the law and statutes and internet research and reading loads of stuff, and after about 2 years, I'd got free of a lot of things in my life physically, and my old job and my house and lots of material things, but I wasn't really free because I was spending all my time researching free man stuff. So I think it's important to have a balance. So free man to me is living as a free man. So however much you're into what you're doing, you got to make sure you still have time to just be. Me and my mate Simon, who I only met at the Ordinary Festival the other week, we came across this phrase, doobie doobie doo, which I quite like, because you kind of do and then you be, and then you do and then you be, and I'm not sure who came up with that, but I like it. So I found I was doing a lot, all through my life I've been busy doing stuff, and being a free man for me is kind of becoming a lot more spiritual now, and actually just being and making sure you take time just to be and not to do anything, not even read or listen to music, just sort of sit in nature, and it's kind of like meditating a bit, and when you do that and you open up your mind, you get all this stuff comes to you, and when your mind's busy and cluttered and full of stuff, that doesn't happen. So where I am right now, that's been the biggest thing for me, is to realize that you don't need to do a lot of research, because your little voice will tell you the answers, if you give it time and space to do that. So yeah, it's about living free, which is what I'm kind of doing now. So the first guy who inspired me was a guy called Robert Arthur Menard in Canada, and he's made a lot of movies which you can get online about how all this works. He was the first guy I think I came across who covered what's called a notice of understanding and intent and claim of right. So that's what I use. I took his sort of basis for that, and then added my own stuff to it, because I think that's important. If you're going to send a notice, first you need to make sure you understand all the terms that are used in it, and you may think they're in English, but there is a language called legalese. If you look up in the English dictionary the term legalese, you'll see it says there the language that legal documents are written in. So it's actually a language. So it's like if you want to translate from English to legalese, you need a law dictionary. You need you need a dictionary that's going to tell you what those terms mean. Like if you want to learn French, you need a French dictionary to tell you what French words are. So yeah, you need to. I spent a lot of time researching the terms, that are used in these notices, and making sure I understood what they meant, and the context that they're used in. But then it's important also, everyone's situation is a bit unique, so you need to change these sort of things to make sure they fit your situation, whatever it is. If I gave notice about tax and DVLA road taxes, it's called, vehicle license duty, and all the others. So claims of debt, to credit card companies. So this notice of understanding, intent, and claim of right that's pretty much what it is. You give notice that this is the situation as I understand it, bump, 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 and therefore I intend to do this, and I claim my right to do this under whatever, you know, aspect of the law, or natural law, moral law, common law, whatever it is, you know, that you're claiming it under, and you give whoever you're sending it to a reasonable notice period in which to reply, and tell them that if they don't reply in some way within that time, that you'll take that to mean that they agree with you, and then it's up to them to respond. The bit I also added into mine was I told them they had to write back to me, my human self, you know, not my legal fiction. And that was interesting, because a lot of these government agencies and people, they can only write to your legal fiction, because that's the entity that exists in this system. You don't exist in the system. So, but it was quite interesting to get letters back from HMRC and DVLA addressed to, you know, John of the family Smith kind of thing, rather than Mr. John Smith, you know. So they will do it, but then you usually find, once they start talking about your legal fiction, they'll head it up with your name again in capitals with the title. So they might address it to you to get you to open it, and then they'll always head it up, you know, relevant to your legal fiction. So you've got to watch that. I had one like that from HMRC. So, but yeah, I mean, draft it out, send it off, and see what happens. I got stopped by a cop called Phil one Sunday, and well, it's actually a line in a song I wrote about it called "No Tax for War," and you can get that on the website. But you know, this guy stopped me because he didn't see any tax on the car, and I went through the whole thing explaining about the war and the fact that if you pay tax, you're actually breaking a statute law called the International Criminal Court Act 2000, and all of that stuff. You know, and this guy, having done his sort of bit, his job, he just sort of said, "Oh, good on you, mate." You know, he said, "I'm sick of being a copper." To be honest, you know, he said, "I got into this to solve crime and help people, and all I do is go around writing out tickets and, you know, chasing people for minor misdemeanors and sending in paperwork and stuff, you know." And he was taking early retirement because he'd had enough, you know. I met a few people like that, you know. And you always meet this sort of. There's this guy Steve from the local authority who came about the council tax. And you know, this is a houseboat I used to have, and he sort of comes bounding down the gangplank, you know, and I opened the door and said hello, and he didn't even say hello, you know, he just said, "Are you the owner?" You know, and I said no, because I wasn't legally. Well, you know, there's the council tax isn't being paid. Who are the owners? You know, and I said, "Oh, good morning. You know, you're going to say hello?" But no, because they try and put this sort of, you know, they try and scare you, and I'm the big authority figure, you know, and you're a little nobody kind of thing, you know. So you can have some fun with that. I mean, all you got to do in that situation, like I did, is ask him for some ID, and ask him for a phone to ring his office to verify he is who he says he is. He's representing who he says he is. And I mean, in this case, he didn't have a phone to give me. So I mean, I'm not obliged to answer anything. If I can't prove who he is, I don't have to answer any of his questions. And so I didn't, you know, and he got really stroppy and frustrated, you know, and he was really trying to intimidate me and get me to give him information, and of course I was under no obligation to. And then there's a guide on my website about how to deal with bailiffs as well, so you can learn from a bit of mine and other people's experience. But it's the same thing when I had a bailiff come around, you know, they march in and sort of, you know, intimidate you. And I mean, at the time I had this jetty and my houseboat here, and the guy came right down the jetty and onto the houseboat. And I said to him, "Well, if you want to talk to me, first thing you got to do is move behind this line here where my gate is." You know, I didn't actually have a gate. I just had a gate gatepost, we get a frame. But I said, unless you stand the other side of that frame, you know, you'll be on private property, and I'm not going to talk to you. So getting this big 6'4" burly bailiff to eventually move back behind behind this gate, you know, before he spoke to him, you can have some fun with that, you know. And the first time it happens, you know, you get a bit nervous, because you've had all these years that you've been conditioned all your life to be scared of these sort of so-called authority figures, you know. But when you realise that you have all the power and you have all the control in those situations, and you take that back, you know, and you make some move or whatever, you know, then you feel empowered, and gives you confidence to do it another time, you know. And the next time you run into someone, you don't have that fear, you know, and you just I find it's best to do it with a smile on your face, you know, and treat it for what it is, because it's just a load of bullshit. You know, it's just a game. It's a big game, and you don't have to play it their way, you know. You can, I mean, the rules of any game, I bet when we were kids we all had fun kind of trying to cheat the rules a little bit, you know, in Monopoly or something like that, you know. And some of the fun you have is getting caught or not getting caught, you know, trying to bend the rules a bit, you know. It's the same thing. So just treat it like a game, because that's all it is. It's not real, you know. The trees and the rivers and the mountains are real, not all this legal system and everything else that goes with it. Yeah, so you've got about £2.2 trillion worth of so-called money in circulation, but you know, the bulk of that isn't actual currency. About 52 billion of it, so 51 billion out of 2.2 trillion, you know, it's a very tiny amount, is sort of notes and coins in circulation, and all the rest is credit. It's just made up out of thin air, you know. It's numbers on a screen. It's created by the bank when someone signs a document agreeing on behalf of their person, of course, to pay it back with interest. But they never create the money to pay the interest, so then the more has to be created, and that's got interest on, and so it goes on. I mean, if you want to really understand this, check out Money as Debt, which is a movie you can get online. Paul Grignon, I think his name is. Really good explanation of that whole thing. But so, you know, the first thing to realise is money isn't real, and it's not backed by anything. It has no tangible value. And then when you look at the whole Eurozone thing and the IMF and all of that, as far as I can see, what's happened is, you know, countries, as they call, you know, corporations called countries, have been sucked into this this sort of system of financial control, and it's been the death of them, really. I mean, look at ancient Greece. I mean, Greece has been around thousands of years, happily sort of going along, minding its own business, and you know, everyone's been okay as far as I'm aware. You know, and in ancient times they gave us some of the best philosophy and all the rest of it. And within a few years, really, relatively, of going into the euro, now they're in a massive problem, you know, and you got, of course, once the IMF bail you out, you're stuffed, because then you're beholden to them and their debt regime. So, I mean, that, to me, that's the whole euro thing is just a scam to get countries indebted and beholden to that system. And then they'll start saying things like, you know, they're already starting to say it. They're saying things like, you know, to stop this happening again, so this never happens again, you know, we need more centralized control. We need a common monetary policy across the whole of Europe. So you're losing more control from separate areas to a central authority, you know. And that never works, you know, and ultimately, you know, it's on its way to one world government and one currency and all of that, and sort of new world order, you know. So I think they engineer these so-called crises, you know, to scare everyone. I don't personally think the thing will crash. They just want everyone to be scared that it will crash. Because if you're still part of that system, and your mortgage and your house and everything depends on it, and your pension, invested in the stock market and all of that, everyone's got a vested interest in it carrying on. If you think suddenly it's going to crash and you're going to lose your house and you're not going to have a pension and all the rest of it, you get scared. So you keep your head down, you keep working, and you keep paying your tax, and that's keeps you under control. Well, there is, yeah. There's ways of redemption through the free man process, because basically these so-called debts, they're all created out of thin air, and the claim, the obligation, if you like, to repay them is with your person. It's not with you as a human. It's with your legal entity, which is your capitalized, titled, usually capitalized, but titled legal fiction, which is your name created by the registration of your birth. So that's the entity that's obliged, that's got the deal, if you like. But all the contracts that support these so-called debts are all invalid under any kind of common law or any kind of contract law, because these contracts don't meet the criteria of a valid contract. So if on behalf of your person you send a notice to this whoever's claiming against you to repay this thing, I mean, this is what I found anyway. If you ask them to prove the claim, they can't actually prove it. So what I did was say, well, if you can prove this claim, I'll repay whatever's owing on behalf of this entity, But they never could, so I didn't pay it back. So yeah, there's ways of doing that. And the bizarre thing is, to actually reduce the amount of debt overall, you've got to not pay. Well, I say you, I mean, I can't give advice to other people, but I found in my case that if you look at how it all works, to reduce the amount of debt, you have to actually not pay it off. Because any money you pay it off with is being created with interest, so you're just perpetuating the whole thing. But yeah, there are and there are some templates. You can see how I did it on my website. You can see how others have done it on their websites. I mean, one that comes to mind off the top of the head was DVLA, where the woman who wrote back said things like, and these letters are all on my website, so you can read them. I haven't hidden anything. She said things like, you must abide by statutory law, even though I'd already put in the notice why that didn't apply. And I will not discuss the matter any further, and then goes on to discuss it for like 4 more paragraphs. I had to send 3 notices in the end to the DVLA. I sent my notice, and she wrote back saying, quite a long letter, but there was just one line in this letter that said, I interpret your notice to mean this, and it was just lost in all the type, I interpret your notice, blah, 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 blah. And you could easily just skip over that and get into what she said, But that's the important line was, I interpret your notice to mean. So even though I'd already claimed what's called estoppel, so I'd sent a notice to the DVLA saying I'm going to deregister my car, and this is why, it works, and if you don't reply, I assume you agree. They wrote back saying, I had to abide by statutory law, and they didn't answer any of the points I'd raised. So because they hadn't answered any of the points I raised, I sent them an estoppel notice saying because you haven't answered any of the claims of right or anything, or challenged any of my understandings, you haven't replied properly to the notice. So I claim estoppel. Then she's saying, I interpret your notice to mean, So I've already claimed estoppel. You could think, well, I don't need to do anything now. But if the last bit of paper on file says, we interpret your notice to mean, and you haven't challenged it, that's what goes down as being interpreted to mean. So I had to reply to that, and I went through every point she raised and told her why I thought she'd misinterpreted it and what I actually meant again, and restated it and sent that back. So that's now the last bit of paper on file, and I never heard back from them again. And they've never sent any more things, or any more claims or documents or anything about the road tax at all since then. I'm now living in my camper van in Europe, and I travel around playing, busking in markets or getting gigs in bars, or this summer I've been playing in a campsite all summer, sort of once a week, and playing in a restaurant and that kind of stuff. And just living out in the country, in the mountains, by the river. I've got a dog now, who sort of met me on the road, so he travels with me, and we hole up somewhere under a tree by a river, and you go to sleep and it's pitch black, the stars are out, and all you can hear is the river running by, and it's beautiful, and it just opens you up to this reconnecting with nature thing, and that's what it's all about. I mean, when walking without any shoes on and feeling the grass under your feet, and swimming in the river, and all, it's almost like the tree hugging thing. It's like go hug a tree. It's actually a good thing to do. Obviously, if you're still heavily in the system, you haven't really got a lot of time to do that, because the one thing the system does is it takes your time away. Employment, is a classic example. And if you look at the term employment, one of the definitions is to keep busy and occupy someone or something, to employ them. It's to keep them busy and occupied so they haven't got time to do what they really should be doing, which is all this other natural stuff, So, I mean, if you want to do that, you can, there's a road to go down, but you can get there. So I'm very free of a lot of the other stuff, and I'm living in the van, and as I said, it's all a lot of nature, and still a lot of parties and things as well. But I'm still holding a passport on behalf of my legal fiction at the moment, which runs out in 2015. But as far as I'm concerned, I can choose when I want to represent this legal fiction or not. It's up to me. So if I want to choose to represent it to reapply for a new passport in 2015, I don't see a problem with that. And I think Michael of Benicia has got a passport for his daughter now, and she's not a registered birth, but he's still got a passport for her. So people tell you, you can't do that, but you can, People told me if you don't pay tax, you'll get put in prison. But that's rubbish. If you understand the thing, go through it the right way, that's not true, So I mean, I think I've noticed in the last 12 months, because I was in the south of France last summer working. I mean, I don't call it work. I call it going to play. I'm going out to play. But I had some gigs down there. But just in the 12 months up to this year, I've noticed a lot more people in vans and living out in the country and meeting up by rivers and having barbecues, and especially down the south of France, a lot of younger people. They're not even bothering going into the system at all. They're just getting an old van, they're getting a mattress in the back and a Calagas stove and some tins and whatever and some veg, and off they go, and then they're living like that. They're just not even getting into the whole thing, so they got to get out of it later. And I think that's probably what we're going to see more and more over the next few generations, is people who are in the matrix, waking up and realizing they're in it and wanting to get out. More and more of that. But some of the new guys coming through realizing there's a matrix over there, and I don't want to get plugged into it in the first place, and bypassing the whole thing. And I think there's a big divergence going on at the moment. And some people are getting more and more lost in the matrix, and they, getting the pizza and putting the telly on, watching X Factor, and worrying about the tax, and then there's another load of people just saying that, I've had enough of that, I'm not doing that anymore, and I want to get back to what I'm supposed to be doing, and they're going that way, and there's a big divergence going. That's what I see. But I think it's really important to get back. We got to get our connection with the land back, because that's what we've lost since the Industrial Revolution and all that. We've lost that connection with the land, I mean, even prior to about, if you look at the stats, even prior to about 1850, 3% of people lived in cities. All the rest lived and worked the land and stuff. And by 1950 or whatever, it was 47%. Half of people living in cities. And everyone's crammed into these cities, so it feels really crowded, but it's not crowded, the place isn't crowded. Britain isn't crowded, on average there's an acre for everyone. That's a lot. And they tell us the world's overpopulated. I mean, that's not true either. You can fit everyone in the world. If you put 4 people, if you take groups of 4 and give them a quarter-acre plot each, you can fit everyone in the world in Alaska. That was a stat I heard. I didn't quite believe it, but I went and checked the numbers out. So I looked at how big Alaska was, and how many people, and how many acres, and all that, and it's about right. If you're still heavily locked into the system, it's something you need to go through, I feel, if you want to get free. It's very hard. I don't think you can have a foot in 2 camps, You can't kind of keep one foot in with the house and the mortgage and all the taxes and all the paperwork stuff, and then try and be free, because you just can't do it. So I think if you want to, it's a kind of a cathartic thing, if you want to liberate yourself, it's kind of for me, it's a bit like the Shawshank Redemption, if you've seen that movie, when Andy Dufresne crawls through 500 yards of the foulest smelling known to man, to come out free on the other side, that's very symbolic of some of the things, we have to do by sending notices to the government and all that kind of thing to get free of all that stuff, that they try and bog us down with to stop us doing what we're here to do. So yeah, I mean, it's a tremendous, I'd say to people, check it out yourself, do your own research, don't just take things word of mouth or sort of third hand, try and get back to the source information and check things out for yourself. But yeah, go through it. There's some really good websites out there, some really good stuff. I've tried to put a lot of summaries of stuff on my website so people haven't got to wade through all the stuff I had to wade through, and people like Michael have done the same, Michael of Benicia, so, and in different ways, so there's some good stuff out there, but yeah, you don't need to kind of wade through it all now. I think there's a few of us who've done quite a lot of groundwork, hopefully to save some of the others some of that hassle, Well, obviously my own, projectfreeman.com, because that's in sort of bite-sized chunks. You can go through all the theory there and check out the research I've done to support it. There's some the TPUC.org, I think it is, John Harris's website. I used that early on for some of the constitutional stuff. He's got copies of all the sort of constitutional stuff you need to look at, like the Bill of Rights and the Magna Carta and all that stuff. There's Michael's site, freetheplanet.net, which is great, and that goes in, I mean, he's gone into a lot more detail on stuff like mortgages and trusts and some of the ways we can keep our sort of valued things away from the system, so that's good. I'd say start with have a look at some of John Harris's stuff, TPUC, and then have a look have a look at some of my stuff for the summaries of things. There's a lot of definitions, you know, a definition of a legal term just on one slide on there, so you can just read what you need and you don't have to go through lots of reams and reams of paperwork. And then, you know, have a look at freetheplanet.net as well, and that goes into more of this alchemy stuff, you know. So yeah, it's a kind of gradual process, I guess. Depends where you are, you know. If you're like I was a few years ago, you know, in a corporate job, with a house and a family and a mortgage and all the rest of it, you know, you're kind of at step one, really. And to get yourself free of all that, you know, there's quite a few things you have to go through. I guess most of the people who've got into this stuff have found at some point you're going to run into some kind of confrontation with the system, you know. So, you know, I've had run-ins with local authority tax inspectors. I've had run-ins with, you know, with policemen stopping me for not having tax on my car, and you know, with bailiffs who were trying to, you know, claim alleged debt against my person and those kind of things. Because I mean, I'm still not a free man. That's the thing. I mean, I'm free in a lot of ways, like physically, from the system and the paperwork and all that stuff and the harassment. But you know, then you got all the internal stuff. You got all your sort of your ego and all that stuff, you know, and a lot of that, your attachments to, you know, I love the Beatles and Man United and stuff like that, and that's been all through my life when I was in the corporate world and all that, and you know, and had a house and a mortgage and the whole thing, and wore a suit. And although a lot of that's gone, I mean, to be really free, you have to let go of everything, you know, and that's a lot. I wouldn't say I'm free yet. I'm free physically in a lot of ways, you know, but like a lot of us, I'm still trying to, you know, reach nirvana. So I'm getting into alchemy now, in studying alchemy and that kind of stuff. And I kind of don't want to. I probably don't want to spend too much time on the technicalities of the detail of the law and all that too much, you know, because then, as I said, you kind of, that can be as much a distraction from your sort of life path as anything, you know. And for me, the whole thing while we're here is to find out what we're here for, you know, find out what our mission is. You know, we've all come here with a mission. And find out what it is and do it, you know, and don't let anything distract you too much. I mean, the free man thing for me has kind of helped me get free of a lot of distraction, so that I can get on with doing what I'm here to do, which I think is kind of communication and sort of spreading the word through music, particularly talking as well, but music mainly. I think, you know, when I do my talks, it's cool and the slides are good and people get into it, but when we sing a song, you know, that's when everyone really gets into it, and it's great when they sing when they sing the words back to you, you know.